Hello, this is FightMe, and in today's video I'll be ranking all the Total War Rome 2 factions on the tier list. Let's have a look at the tiers of today's video. So there's God tier. That's only for the strongest and broken factions in the game. Beneath that you got Almost There. That's for all the factions that are nearly God tier, but just lack in some roster departments. Then there is Decent. Yeah, okay, that will explain itself. And at the bottom we have CA. Why did you make this faction so bad? So let's start off with the big boy Rome. I'll explain why this is God tier, because this faction is nearly almost banned in every competitive game. Ban Rome from the defenders. And this faction is just good in every department. In infantry, elite infantry, in their archer department, cavalry department. It's just all around a really strong faction, and it got tortoises. So Rome is just a full package. Next up we have Arvorni. I would grade Arvorni between decent and almost there. Like it's a really good faction. There are just other barb factions that are better, but I would put it in almost there, and we'll be ranking it from left to right, so left is better than right. But for now I'll put it in almost there, because Arvorni is just a basic barb faction. You got like everything decent, but not exceptional good. Except the Osran, they are just one of the best elites in the game. But yeah, the archers can be really useful with the Guru that deploy your towers on a siege battle. And their infantry overall is just decent. Next up we have Athens. Athens is an interesting one, because before I didn't really like Athens, and I didn't think it was that strong. But now I realize, with the capability of having tortoises, and having a decent mid-tier roster with 4x and 4x hoplite, combined with some Qatari Spears and Cretan archers, they can be really strong. But I will still put them at decent. They're definitely not almost there, but they're also not meh, and Athens is just decent. The next one is Bactra. Bactra, I would say, is definitely worse than Athens, right? I don't know if I would call it meh. I think there are worse factions definitely than Bactra, but it's 100% worse than Athens. So we will see later if it will be adjusted. Because Bactra don't have any tortoises, they don't have the 4x hoplites, their elite hoplites are bad, and it's just a little bit worse. But yeah, let's head over to Boya. So Boya is a strong one. I would definitely grade this over Arvorni. I know like people like Arvorni sometimes more over Boya because of the guerrilla archers. I just find Boya way stronger. If you can use a little bit those cheap hunters to do as much damage to infantry as possible, combined with their sword followers that are so strong. The sword followers can eat those chosen swords from Arvorni alive. I think Boya is definitely stronger than Arvorni because of the sword followers. Next up we have Carthage. So Carthage is also almost there. It is like Rome, but less strong. So in a siege battle, Carthage can be really useful because of tortoises and having pretty much options for the mid tier. The low tiers, they got some Gallics, they got some Iberians, they got really good archers. I would say I would bring Carthage over Arvorni, but I wouldn't bring it over Boya, I think. Boya is just a little bit strong. I'm not sure, but for now we'll keep it over here. So Macelon. So Macelon is an interesting one. I would put this immediately at CA. Why did you do this? I know it's a pretty good land battle faction, and on defense can be pretty useful with a full sally out army, but why didn't CA just give him some infantry units to make them more fun to play and having more options that you can do with this faction? Because all these factions, I will immediately put them up there. I don't have infantry, which makes them one-dimensional. You know, you can only bring cavalry, and the enemy will know if you bring this faction on defense, they will expect the full sally out and they will prepare for it, and on attack it just doesn't work. But anyway, I will put this three over here. CA, why did you make those? Give him some infantry. So let's head over to Egypt. Egypt is a good faction, definitely, but on its own I would grade it under Athens, and it's definitely better than Bactra. Having the option to bring tortoises is like huge. I know Seleucid got some high tiers that are really useful and some extra low tiers, but I would just bring Athens over Egypt just because of the tortoises. Without the tortoises, yeah, Egypt's better. Next up we got Epirus. Epirus is another tortoise faction. This faction has decent elites, the Royal Peltas, but it lacks on the mid-tier department. For Epirus you can only bring 3 stem knights, which definitely makes this faction weak. It's not better than Athens, because mid-tier units are the way to go in siege battles and even in most of the land battles. So would I call it better than Egypt? No. Even though it got tortoises, it's not stronger than Egypt. Having strong mid-tier units is really valuable. So because of that I will put Epirus behind Egypt, and I would put it above Bactra because having tortoises. Next up we got Corki. So Corki has the Corki nobles, which is an honorable mention because they look so good. But that's also the only thing that Corki's got. It's looking good, but it's not that strong of a faction. This would be a meh faction. You know, why play this faction? You're just paying 760 for Cardly Axemen, which are a little bit better than 4x, which is definitely not worth it. Your archers are not that strong, and your low tiers are your hillmen, so that's not that good. On land battles, this faction is a little bit stronger because they got horse archers and decent cap. But yeah, it's not that good of a faction. Alright, next up we got Glacier. So Glacier is a really strong faction. I think you'll know that already. It's definitely stronger than Arvorni. It's stronger than Kush. Yes, I would say so. Even though Carthage got tortoises, their infantry is not that strong. I would definitely put it up here. Is it stronger than Boya? So this is a good question. What you're trading between this faction if you want to choose one or the other. Glacier got the good archers. Boya got the elite infantry. Boya is sword sword followers also beat the Glacier legionaries, so that's also a thing you need to think of. Glacier is more safe. I would say it's definitely for newer people. Pick Glacier over Boya, because it's also risky to bring elite infantry, because if they get shot or peel out, you lose a really fast lot of value. So because of that, I would put Glacier above Boya, but I personally like Boya more, but it's a little bit harder to use, I would say. Alright, next up we got Samaria. So guys, Samaria, it's a good faction. No, check. It's terrible. It doesn't have any sword units. They got only spear units, which only the elite spears are a little bit useful. Even the spear units are not that great. With 80 armor, they can be taken down really easy. The only strong point is their missile infantry. Because of that, I definitely wouldn't put it up here. Corki would definitely beat Samaria, even though they're having the good archers. So I would put this at CA. Why did you make this faction so bad? Because this faction is close to the steppe lands, and it doesn't even have really good cavalry or something. Got only one light shock cap. That's it. It does have horse archers, which can be a little bit more useful on land battles, but even on land battles this faction is pretty bad. So I would put this on CA. This faction is just a little bit too weak. Right, let's get over to Getty. So Getty is a interesting one also. They got their elite infantry, which is really useful, the Getty nobles. It doesn't have any mid tiers, so this is a really important note, because mid tiers are again really useful, especially in competitive games. But you can definitely elite spam with Getty. They have decent archers with like 30 armor and fast reload. Their low tiers are also not the greatest. They got Axe Warriors. If they had Celtics, it would be a much better faction. But the Axe Warriors are less cost efficient, a little bit more safe because they got more armor, 65. But they're not worth the money. 470 for an Axe Warrior instead of 350 for a Celtic Warrior. So yeah, I would still put this at decent, because it's definitely a decent faction. And this is the only Barb faction which has shock cap. So that's also really important. I would definitely put it above Bactra, but still under Epirus, because they don't have any Tauruses. Next up, we got the Barbarian faction Iceni. So first of all, what we got to say is Iceni don't have any archers. This is an important note, because archers are really valuable, especially on sieges. And their slingers, I find them a little bit expensive. They're decent, but they're also pretty expensive. Their infantry is pretty decent though. They got chosen sword band, which are a little bit worse than the Arvorni chosen swords, but they're definitely really good. And they got a high charge bonus, 32 I think. Furthermore, it got ambushers, which can be really useful. And it got a scare unit, the painted warriors. Iceni got decent elites, but I would say they're one of the weakest elites of all barbarian factions, because of having 75 armor and not being that great. But it's still a decent infantry unit. So because of that, is it better than Egypt and Athens? Honestly, I wouldn't say so. So I would say, because of having no archers, under Egypt, but above Epirus. But yeah, I would put them up there. I think that's a nice spot. And if you disagree, let me know in the comments and see your guys' suggestions and what you guys think of this tier list. So next up, we got Kush. People think Kush should be at the same level as Rome, because it counts as Rome, right? But it got a ton of weaknesses. Their shotas and their armored shotas have a lot of armor piercing, right? But their units are really expensive, especially the normal shotas. They cost nearly 900, and they put an equal fight against sword followers and Galatian legionaries. Because of that, I would put this definitely at almost there. Their shotas only got 75 armor, which is a little bit basic for mid tiers. But for a 900 cost unit, it's pretty risky. And yeah, that's their weakest part. Their units are just so expensive. Their slaves are really good for their cost. They have decent archers. Their elite archers are too expensive though. So I will put this under all these factions, and under Arvorni. I think a lot of people won't agree with me, but maybe I would rate them over Arvorni. And my final answer, I will put it under Carthage, but above Arvorni. So let's head over to Lucitani. When I see Lucitani, I see a risky faction. Why? Because 95% of their units have nearly no armor. You can shoot them in the front and they will still die. But in combat, they're really good. Don't get me wrong. They're really good in combat, but they never get taken in competitive games because of being so risky. Because people, as soon as they see like a veteran warrior, which is a really good unit, like a really good unit for the cost, 700, you can do a ton of damage. But because of the fact they only have 40 armor, people will shoot it in the front and they will die really fast. Because of that, you will lose a ton of value. Same with the Lucitani nobles. They got a little bit more armor, 75 I think, but it's just not enough, and they can get just shot to shit. I would put this faction under Samaria, because if Lucitani went against Samaria, I think Samaria would win because of their elite archers. Because of those archers, they can just destroy every unit of Lucitani. Eventually their ammo will run out for sure, but then you still got the nobles. They're okay, they can do some damage. So yeah, I would put it over here. It's a really risky faction, but it's a high risk, high reward. If you won't get shot, if you save it until the end, when the enemy don't have pila and ammo, it can be up here, I would say. But overall, it's just a risky faction, man. Let's head over to Armenia. Armenia is more stable than Lucitani, definitely. But this is my least favorite stable faction. It got the cataphracts, which are really good. Got the Cardly Axemen, which can beat the 4x swords, but are a little bit expensive for what they can do. But they don't have any elites. Their spears are dog shit, I have to be honest. And the rest of the units are just not that good and not that strong. The only thing you can bring for Armenia is the Cardly Axemen and the Eastern Archers. Never bring the elite archers. Please don't do that. It's a scam, literally. You're paying like 200 more for a spear. But never do that. If they get charged by cavalry, they will die anyway. Well, apart from that, even on land battles, it's good, definitely. You got the armored horse archers and they got the cataphracts, but it's not a crazy faction or something. I don't think it can beat Boya, but yeah. And I would say it's worse than Colchis, because the elite spears from Colchis are just a little bit better. Yeah, because of that, and being my least favorite faction, plus I really don't like the color of Armenia, I'll put it at meh, at the lowest from meh. Next up we got Macelon. Macelon will be somewhere here. I have to put it next to Epirus somewhere. It depends on playstyle. If you prefer bringing elites, bring Epirus. If you prefer bring more units like 4x and Furious Spears and Royal Peltas, go with Macelon. I previously found Epirus better, but I'm shifting to Macelon because of having just more mid-tiers than Epirus and having the capability of bringing Furious Spears, which are really strong. I would say it's a little bit underrated unit. Because of that, I would put it above Epirus. But both their cavalries are really strong and really useful. Now we got Arrivaci. So the units of Arrivaci are weaker than the Lucitani ones, but they're more stable. They're less risky. There's Qatari Infantry got 65 armor, which is way more than 40, and they can still hold their own. They're a really good unit because they can put an equal fight against the 4x swords, and they cost only 620, so 100 less. The only downside of Arrivaci is not having archers like Lucitani. They have really good slingers like the Balearic slingers, but in settlements not that useful. On land battles, these factions are way stronger, I would say. Still, Lucitani is really risky on land battles because of their armor. But yeah, Arrivaci is a less risky faction. Because of that, I have to rate it above Lucitani. Would I say it's better than Colchis? Yes. Even though they don't have any archers, their infantry is just really cost effective and they can do a ton of damage with their Balearic slingers. Especially on defense, this is a really strong faction. On land battles, it's also really stable. And on attack, it's a little bit worse, but it can hold its own, especially with having the option of bringing ambushers for guerrilla deployment. Because of that, I would rate Arrivaci higher than Colchis and Armenia. Next up, we got Masilia. I would rate Masilia next to Bactra. Masilia got the 4x swords, they got the X warriors, which I would never bring, by the way. They got the Celtic warriors, which is way more important. Pretty good Furious Spears. Their Furious Spears are a little bit better than the standard Furious Spears, because they have higher charge and higher melee attack. They got a little bit lower melee defense, but it's still worth it. They got guerrilla deploy archers, the Gallic Hunters, which they can only bring 3 of them. So I don't know if I want to rate this higher than Bactra. I think they're a little bit on the same level. If you want to have a faction that has guerrilla deploy, I think on sieges it's more important to have that. I'll rate Masilia higher. If you think on land battles and defensive battles, Bactra could be better because of the Syrian archers with 40 armor and precision shot. Yeah, I think where it is now is a good position. I think most of the times it will get chosen over Bactra, especially in competitive sieges, because they have the option of bringing guerrilla units, their archers. But as a faction by its own, I would rate Bactra just a little bit higher than Masilia. Next up we got Macelon. Macelon is almost there, definitely. It's a really good faction. People call it Desert Rome because they have Roman units, but in a grey uniform. They have the armored cohorts, they have the legionaries. It's a really good faction. They got ambushers, and it's the only faction which has the guerrilla deploy cavalry. And furthermore, it got really good skirmishers. I would say they're one of the most cost efficient skirmishers in the game. They got 540, I'm pretty sure, and their melee stats are one of the highest in the game. A little bit underneath the Pick Peltas, but they got 720. But yeah, they got high missile damage and fast reload. And in combat, they're like a Celtic warrior. They're definitely a really good faction. I might even put it above Arvorni, but I'm not sure. You're trading a little bit more cost-efficient infantry and cheap cavalry or archers, because Macelon doesn't have archers. But yeah, I would put it over here. I think most of the people would rate Arvorni higher, but personally I like Macelon more. But yeah, these are a little bit on the same level. Next up we got Nabatia. The first few things you should think of when you see Nabatia are the 4 heavy archers with 40 armor, which are nearly like Syrians, a little bit worse, because they don't have precision shot. And you got to think of the armored desert hoplites. Guys, that's one of the most cost-effective hoplite units in the game. It costs only 780, which isn't cheap, and they got 30 charge bonus. So those are the 2 most important units for Nabatia. Furthermore, they got the Noble Horse, which is a really good cost-efficient cavalry for only 800. It's really stable and really good. And they got Axemen and Swordsmen. They're around 450, 470, and they're both really good. Swordsmen are better than the Axemen, but the Axemen are a little bit more safe and they cost 20 more. And the downside of the Swordsmen is the morale. They got only 35 morale. The morale for Nabatia and Saba is really important. Their units can break really fast, so if you lose your general, you're in a big problem. But overall, it's a pretty good faction, honestly. It's definitely not mad, it's definitely stable, it's pretty decent. It's still under Masilia, because they don't have any 4x swords. Even though the armor desert hoplites can beat the 4x swords, they also cost 80 more. Because of that, I would rate it at this position. Furthermore, we got Nervii. Nervii, I would say Nervii is a little bit like Getty. The main strat that's used for Nervii is spamming their Oathsworn combined with the Celtics and the Gallic Hunters. Because of the Gallic Hunters, this faction has guerrilla deploy, and that's why it's a little bit more useful than Getty. Their Oathsworn are better than the Getty noble swords, but honestly that's because of the cost too, so I wouldn't look at that too much. But the big two things are the archers with guerrilla deploy and the Celtic warriors, which Getty don't have. Because of that, I would rate Nervii higher than Getty. Nervii also got fierce swords as an option, like a naked warrior kinda. That's a too risky unit. You can bring maybe 1 or 2 of them if you want to. On land battles, this is a pretty good faction because it got the mighty horse, which are pretty good, and yeah, it got Celtic warriors. Yeah, you could bring fierce swords on the land battle. But let's head over to Odrisha. So the Odrishan kingdom got to be up here. I love the faction, don't get me wrong, but it has the same problem as Lucitani. They are high risk, high reward, but they can get shut down so easy. The Lucitani nobles are one of the best unit in the game. Even though they got some armor, as long as you shoot them a few volleys, they will die eventually, faster than other elite units, and it still costs 1300 denarii. It's just a too risky faction. Because of that, I would rate it under Lucitani. I think again, especially against Samaria, also this would lose because of the archers of Samaria and the noble hoplites, which got expert charge defense, and that makes the charge bonus of Odrisha useless. Yeah, Odrisha got some decent armor piercing. It got archers, which Lucitani doesn't have, but the only thing is their infantry is more risky. You can't leave those Volksmen, those Thracian warriors, those Lucitani nobles too long in combat, because then they will get killed way faster because of their low melee defense. I think this place is a decent faction for Odrishan Kingdom. On land battles, it's pretty good though, because on land battles you don't have time to shoot all those nobles down. Because of that, you can do a ton of damage with your lead units. But yeah, let's head over to Parthia. Yeah, Parthia, Armenia are a little bit the same, and Armenia and Corki are a little bit the same. Parthia got also cataphracts just like Armenia, but it doesn't have the Cardi Axemen. They got the Parthian swords, which are a little bit worse, but they are more cost efficient. Furthermore, they also got the Hillman. They have better archers though. They got the Parthian foot archers, which has precision shot for a 400 cost unit. The armor is low though, but still it's better than the Eastern archer. So yeah, because of that, I have to rate it above Armenia. I wouldn't say it's better than Caucasus. But yeah, let's head over to Pergamon. If you guys didn't know, Pergamon is one of my favorite factions, and Pergamon is honestly really strong. I would say it's up here, especially in siege battles. On land battles, I would put it down here or here, but for siege battles, it's so strong on attack and defense. This faction got the Egyma Spears, which are really strong. They got 5 volleys of Pila, expert charge bonus, and a really high charge bonus. So as long as you cycle them in and out, they can get a ton of kills also in combat. They got 80 armor, which is pretty stable. They cost 890, and they are a pretty good unit. Furthermore, they got the Glacier swords, which is the best low tier unit, pretty sure. And they got the Pig Peltas, but I wouldn't bring too many of them because you still need your 125 range archers. But overall, it's a really good faction. You got a pretty cheap elite shock cav. I wouldn't bring that. Just bring the Citizen if you need to, or the Tarantine. But because of being my favorite faction, being honestly pretty damn strong, I would rate this up here. Would I rate it above Iceni? Honestly, maybe yes. Would I rate it above Egypt? Yes, I would say so. Would I rate it above Athens? Maybe not, because of the tourists. I would put it up here, guys. I think it can beat most of these factions. And also against those elite spam from Nervii and Getty, those Egyma Spears and Freer Spears from Pergamon can do a ton of damage and get a ton of value. Let's head over to Pontus. So Pontus is a little bit weird because it's really hard to spend all your money for Pontus, especially on the siege battles. On land battles, it's pretty decent because it got the horse archers, it got the really good Cappadocian cavalry, which are really strong, and if you want to, you can also bring a chariot. For siege battles, you're depending on your infantry and your archers most of the time. Their infantry is not that strong. They got the Pontic swords, and guys, this is a little fact, you can also try this out. If you chevron the Pontic swords up one time, they can beat the Thorax. So that's an important thing you need to do for Pontus. Upgrade your Pontic swords at least one time, so they can go toe to toe at least against the Thorax sword. Because Pontic swords cost 620, so they are 100 cheaper than the Thorax swords. When you upgrade them once, they can be stronger than the Thorax swords and be cheaper. So that's an interesting thing. But the only downside of the the Pontic swords is their health. If they get focused by missiles or pila, they will die pretty fast. But yeah, furthermore, it got Furious Spears, it got Celtic Warriors, it got Eastern Archers. It's overall pretty decent. I would definitely rate this up here, but I would rate this under all these factions. Nabatia has the 4 archers, and Masilia got the Gallic Hunters for the deploy. I could put this above Nabatia, because if you upgrade the Pontic swords once, you can beat 4x, but because of the fact they can still get shot down and can die really easy, I have to put this under Nabatia. Next up we got Ardia. Ardia is another really fun faction to play. It got a lot of strengths, honestly. They don't have any archers, which is an important thing to tell you guys. Archers do be really important. Their slingers are pretty weak because they are slave slingers, but they're a little bit like Pergamon. They don't have archers, but they have really good elite hoplites, and they got the Illyrian Furious Spears, which got 5 pila volleys. They cost nearly the same as Furious Spears. They're 20 cheaper, 550. And in combat they can do a ton of damage. They can beat the normal Furious Spears in combat. But you gotta watch out because they have 10 less armor than the normal Furious Spears. Furthermore, it got the really cost efficient Levy Furious Spears. They have also 65 armor, which is crazy for a 380 cost unit. Got 5 pila volley rounds. And they got counter carry tactics. I have to... like, this is another personal opinion. Most of the people will put it down here, I think. I would rate this up here under Getty, but above Bactra, Masilia, Nabatia and Pontus. It's just such a fun faction to play because having the Illyrian Noble Hoplites, which are really strong, Illyrian Furious Spears, Levy Furious Spears, they got Guerrilla unit, the Illyrian Raiders, and they got 4 Celtic Warriors. So it's a pretty good faction. And most of the time you always have a 20 stack army because all of the units are really cheap. And another important note, they got the Illyrian Hoplite, which is the only mid-tier hoplite which has 105 armor, guys. 105 armor, which is like elite hoplite. And they got expert charge defense. So any high charge bonuses from your Odrisha units or something won't work against Ardia. So that's another really unique and interesting unit for Ardia. Yeah, I would put it up here. Just try it out. On attack and on defense can be really strong. Next up we got Saba. Saba is a pretty strong faction, guys. It does have archers, which are pretty expensive for what they can do. They cost 360, but they only have 125 range instead of 150 range, which you should normally pay for a 150 archer. Saba, their strong points are obviously the camel cataphracts. They are so cost efficient, they cost only 1,000. They got one of the highest mass in the game. If you charge a unit with camels overall, you can just tamp through them. Yeah, it's just a crazy unit. You always want to bring 1 or 2 of those. But furthermore, you got the Macelon Marauders. They're honestly nearly like the Thracian warriors of Odrisha. High charge bonus, but they're honestly more stable. A stable version. They got 36 charge bonus, which is crazy. It's the X-Warrior, so they got a high armor piercing, but overall a little bit less damage. They got a high attack, and they got 65 armor. It's pretty stable for a mid-tier unit with such a high charge bonus. But furthermore, they got the Sabian swords, which are also really strong. It's a little bit on the expensive side, but they got a ton of armor for a low-tier unit, so it's a pretty decent one. Because of those units, I'm rating this faction high, but I'm rating this faction under Nabatia. Nabatia is just more stable. Saba can be really strong, but Nabatia is more stable. And I think it can definitely beat Pontus. Right, let's head over to Seleucid. So Seleucid has tortoises, and it got elite infantry, the 4 Syrian archers, which makes this faction really strong. And furthermore, they got Furious Spears, they got a Hillman, and because of that, I automatically have to rate this higher than Athens. It just has more options. It's just an Athens version without 4x hoplite Cretans, but they got 4 Syrians, which are honestly maybe more useful. They have the silver shields, which are really important. You got an option to bring elite units and low tier units, because Athens don't have any cheap low tiers like Seleucid, the Eastern Spearman or the Hillman. Next up we got Swabi, another one of my favorite factions. Got for their elite infantry the Sword Masters. Their armor and health is really high, but if you compare their stats to a Glacier Legionary, you would definitely think they're overpriced, because it's nearly the same. But the unit is much better. Don't underestimate the Sword Masters. Because of the high health and high armor, and because of the headhunt, is an important note. Bringing a ton of Sword Masters is really a must for Swabi. Furthermore, you got your Bloodsworn. I usually bring around 2 or 3 units of those. What army I exactly make for Swabi, you can see in the video that's now at the top right of your screen. You can click on that to watch that. But Swabi got just so cost effective units like the Bloodsworn and the Club Levy. Furthermore, they got Berserkers. That's the scare ability, and they're really strong but really risky. I usually don't bring them, but it's a really strong unit. But what I find more interesting is the Hex Bearers. It's a small unit, but you use it for its scare and its ability to lower enemy units' morale. It's a really useful unit and really unique. But furthermore, they got the Longbow Hunters, which I love. They got 40 missile damage, but 125 range. But they also cost nearly nothing. But if you want to have more stable and less risky archers, you got the Swabi bowwomen with 150 range, but with the standard damage 35. But they got spears, so in combat they can do a ton of damage, but also against horses. But don't think you can just fight horses just like that, because if you get charged by horses, you will get really damaged because it's a light armored unit. But yeah, because of all of those aspects, I really love Swabi. I would rank it somewhere up here. I would rank it above the other spam units, and they got a guerrilla unit, the Night Hunters. The question is, where do I rank it? I definitely rank it above Egypt. I think over here is a really good place for Swabi. Let's head over to Syracuse. So Syracuse is another faction which you definitely have to call decent. It's a really stable faction. The only thing is, it doesn't have really good archers. You would think for a Greek faction it would have Cretan archers or something, but it got only archers with 125 range. But overall they got the 4x hoplite, 4x swords, they got 3 Samnite warriors. They don't have any low tiers though, but you don't need those. For Syracuse and Athens you just have to get those mid tiers, get those Fire Spears, etc. And because of the reason that your archers are really cheap because they're not that great, you have more money for your infantry, but you can also spend it into some Balearic slingers, which is also pretty unique for a Greek faction. I would rate it under Pontus. Next up we got Tylis. Tylis is a really strong faction. This has to be up here. Their tribal warriors, their mid-tier units, are honestly the most cost-efficient unit in the game, and they can beat all other mid-tiers. But the only downside is of Tylis, they don't have any archers. They got the standard Barbarian slingers, which are decent, but they don't have any archers. But if this faction would have archers, it would have been somewhere up here. But yeah, Tylis is just really strong. It got Celtic warriors, it got Osworn. It has a really unique unit, which is called the Gallophrasian Infantry. It's a really fun unit. It got high charges, but you don't need to bring those if you got tribal warriors. Yeah, it's not per se underrated. I think people know that's a really strong unit, but just having the options to bring tribal warriors, Celtic warriors, and Osworn will most of the times not lead you to bring those. But yeah, those Gallophrasian warriors are really good in combat, high charge, but low armor. Yeah, I would put this above Boya, honestly. Even though Boya got archers, the tribals are just so strong. And they got 90 armor and 72 melee defense. These are just tanks, man. And last but not least, we got Sparta. So this is interesting. Sparta got Cretans, they got Royal Spartan. I personally really like Sparta because of the Royal Spartans. Those Royal Spartans are the strongest hoplite unit in the game. And Sparta has Cretan archers, which will also help. And what I usually bring for Sparta is just Royal Spartans and Cretan archers. Maybe some headless archers. And more you really don't need. Because of this, I have to put it somewhere up here with the elite spams. Would I say Getty elite spam is better than Sparta elite spam? Probably yes. So because of that, I have to rate it up here. Honestly, a really high rank for what most of people rank Sparta. Most people rank it down here or somewhere here. But I think Sparta is a pretty strong faction and a little bit maybe underrated. But yeah, that was the tier list for today. But before you go, there are 2 other YouTubers that made a tier list of all factions. They are called Linksi and Gorm Miolneer. And I want to quickly show you their faction tier list. Here, this one is from Gorm, this one is from Linksi, and this one is mine. This way you can compare them a little bit. And let me know in the comments what faction tier list you agree the most with. And yeah, I got their channels in the description if you want to check their videos out. You definitely should, to get different opinions on all the factions. But anyway, thanks for watching. And if you're interested how to make one of the best army comms for one of these factions, make sure to check this video out. And I will see you guys there. Bye bye.